Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands, and for this video I'm going to be going through the top 10 creepiest horror movie characters. So any character that unnerved me, made me feel uncomfortable, or just generally gave me the heebie-jeebies with whatever they got up to on screen or their appearance within the movie. And on that note, I should say I will be discussing some people's appearance in this video, but I relate it merely to the movie itself and how they came across on screen within that film playing the character. Far be it from me to talk about anyone's appearance in a derogatory way. But this should be a good one. The top 10 creepiest horror movie characters. Let's get straight to it. In at number 10 we have John Christie in 10 Rillington Place from 1971. A horrifying true story of a seemingly mild-mannered gentleman in the 1940s who murdered predominantly women in his apartment building in the Notting Hill district of London. And he did this for several years before police found out that he was guilty of these terrible crimes. And more disturbing than that, it was actually an innocent man who lived in the apartment block who initially was convicted and executed, having thought to have murdered all these people. It wasn't until later that the police realised it was actually this guy, John Christie, that had done it. But in the movie, John Christie, he is kind of uncomfortably played with a real sense of kind of innocence and just almost kind of absent-mindedness. He really does seem like this kind of everyday, quiet guy that keeps himself to himself. But whenever he gets the chance, he is a real nasty guy and kills these women in cold blood. And the way he kind of evades justice and slinks his way through the justice system and just convinces everyone that he is in fact this kind of sort of wholesome everyday man is really disturbing and really gets under your skin in this one, particularly knowing that an innocent guy took the rap for it while he stood to the side still claiming his innocence. And yeah, he just has a real kind of creepiness about him in just the way he slinks about the movie, and really kind of gets you angry as well at some points. But yeah, you watch this film and it has a very kind of grimy, nasty, confined feel to it, where you just know you don't ever want to be in the room alone with this guy. And this movie was actually tried to be made several times during the 1960s, but filmmakers considered it too disturbing for an audience at that time. And John Christie in this is played by Richard Attenborough, who's now become a well-known, beloved actor. And if you want to see a really impressive acting range, keep in mind this is the same guy that convincingly played a serial killer in this movie, yet played Santa Claus so belovedly and so wonderfully in Miracle on 34th Street. That is a very impressive, varied resume, if you ask me. But yeah, in at number 10, John Christie, real slimy, grimy character who always gave me the creeps whenever I watch this movie. In at number 9, we have Zelda from Pet Sematary from 1989. I always felt a little bit bad about this one because this was a character that was suffering from spinal meningitis, and in the movie she was the sister to the wife of the family, who was dejected to this attic bedroom by her parents and confined there because they either couldn't or didn't want to deal with this horrible disease that was taking over her body. And the wife in the movie, as a young girl, had to go up and tend to Zelda, who, being honest, didn't really look all that great and looked pretty terrifying, quite frankly. But the Zelda character in Pet Sematary, I saw this when I was a kid, and I just wasn't ready for it. I knew I was in for a creepy kid horror movie, but kind of the emotional rot that you go through seeing Zelda and just how much of it in a bad way she is, and just the disturbing idea that she's kept up there and suffers while her young sister can look on helplessly is pretty horrifying. And for the rest of the movie, I mean, that scene hit me like a truck when I was younger. And for the rest of the movie, I was more scared, not of all the creepy kid stuff that was going on, or the Indian burial ground, I was more scared that Zelda would make another appearance at some point during the film, which of course she did, and traumatized me even further. But yeah, that is a shockingly disturbing and hell of a creepy scene, and just one that I wasn't expecting. Now, Zelda was actually played by a man called Andrew Hubbersek, who I couldn't find very little about him. He's in a couple of movies here and there, but not much at all. But I was actually surprised. I had no idea that she was played by a man. So you learn something new every day in the world of horror. But yeah, number 9 is Zelda from Pet Sematary. In at number 8, we have Edward Carver from the Poughkeepsie tapes from 2007. A little movie that was shot in 15 days, but was quickly removed from cinemas on the grounds of it being too disturbing, and then kind of disappeared for a while, giving it this real aura of this mysterious, terrifying movie. And boy, is this one a disturbing film. This is like a faux pas documentary that plays out as if it's real, about a serial killer that plagues the Poughkeepsie area over a number of years. Goes around mainly killing women and children and just sort of snatching them up in some really distressing and drawn out scenes. Very hard to watch. But Edward Carver, he doesn't make that much appearance in the movie, but I'm putting him in the list because there is a certain scene in the movie which is creepy as hell and has always stayed with me. When he abducts a woman and he has her tied up in the basement and he kind of slinks slowly into the room wearing a weird mask. He first appears crouched in the shadows and slowly makes his way across the floor and to this terrified woman. And honestly, it's one of the scariest scenes you'll see. It really gets under my skin whenever I watch that. In what is, as I say, a very disturbing movie, that just raises the creepy bar even more. And the way he slinks in across the floor is very uncanny. I really don't like that scene. But Edward Carver was played by an actor called Ben Mesmer. Again, couldn't find much information on him. Doesn't seem to have done much after this one. But he was scarily convincing in the odd shot when he appears on camera in this movie. So in at number 8, we have Edward Carver from the Poughkeepsie tapes. In at number 7, and you might think I've been a bit mean on this one, I don't know. But in at number 7, we have Wendy Torrance from The Shining in 1980. Now, The Shining is a film that does scare me in a number of ways. I do think Kubrick did a good job creating such a chilling environment. And I have to say, Jack Nicholson, he's kind of the crazy axe murderer guy. I can deal with that. But Wendy Torrance's overly terrified features in this movie really creep me out and really unnerve me. She has that kind of sickly, pale face with the huge bulging eyes, and her fear in this one is palpable across the screen, and it always actually gets to me and quite frightens me. There's a real uncanniness about her facial features in this one, and I do find it scary. Now, it's well documented that Shelley Duvall had a hard time on The Shining, which may explain some of kind of her pasty features in this one and why she does look genuinely terrified. But yeah, the way she just sort of the way she comes across, the fear in her eyes and the gaunt appearance and the pale skin, I actually find that element of The Shining probably scarier than anything else. So credit to Shelley Duvall for being so expressionistic in that role, but boy do I find it unnerving. But yeah, Shelley Duvall, she unfortunately passed away earlier this year from complications with meningitis, and didn't see her in all that much other stuff, to be honest, and she does look quite different when I see her in other things. But yeah, she just really gives a frighteningly realistic performance in this one. So yeah, in at number 7, we have Wendy Torrance from The Shining. In at number 6, we have Kane in Poltergeist 2 from 1986. Kane was the old man preacher that comes a-knocking on the house and gives them the doomed prophecy that they're all going to die in there. So not the most friendliest of door-to-door salesmen. But Kane was one of the very first characters who actually stayed with me as a kid as making me uncomfortable because of his appearance in a film. He was very striking to me back then, but in a way that really unnerved me. And he has sort of that gaunt feature and just looks very, very unwelcoming in his whole demeanour. And the fact that he would come up to someone's house and knock on the door and act in this scary and bizarre way, I didn't like the notion of that at all. But Kane was played by a stage actor called Julian Beck. He only did a small number of movies, was mainly known for his theatre work. And spare a thought for him in this one, because the reason for his gaunt appearance was he was actually dying of stomach cancer. And he did in fact pass away in 1985 at the age of 60 before Poltergeist 2 was released. So unfortunately he didn't get to see it. However, he has found himself in a lasting legacy by being this creepy guy that a lot of people seem to remember, not just me, from their childhood. Being that really scary guy from Poltergeist 2. So yeah, in at number 6, we have Kane from Poltergeist 2. In at number 5, we have Count Orlock in Nosferatu from 1922. I mean, just one look at this guy and you can see that he is going to give you the creeps on a dark night, no doubt about it. But yeah, his kind of weird, elongated features, again, the gaunt appearance, and just the way he kind of slinks about the place is really scary stuff. Added to that, the 1922 vintage gothic grainy look, and it really gives an aesthetically unnerving quality to this movie. I do love the scenes, although they are very, very strange again, where you see his shadow slinking up the wall, his elongated fingers as they rise up there, and particularly when they hover over the actress's chest. All really, really weird stuff. You certainly would not want to wake up to that face looking over you. And yeah, one of the most, I would say, distinctly creepy horror characters that's out there. But Count Orlock was played by Max Schreck. This was a pretty early film for him. It was his third film, and he actually churned out a lot of movies throughout the years until his death of a heart attack in 1936, where he was only 56. But yeah, legendary in his iconic status now. In at number 5, we have Count Orlock from Nosferatu. In at number 4, we have Haggis the Witch from Pumpkinhead in 1988. Another one that really creeped me out right from being a little kid. This is the seemingly ancient looking witch that lives out in the swamp area, where Lance Henriksen, he goes to her after his son's died for him to resurrect the dead child. And after a while, she sort of gleefully decides to do it. But she just sits in this weird dark hut. As I say, she looks older than time. And as a kid, she creeped me out but fascinated me. Like, I just wondered who she was, like what she did all day and how long she'd been there, that kind of thing. And she just doesn't have a nice demeanour about her at all. Even the fact that she brings his son back from the dead, you don't feel that she does it for any kind of nice reason. And that was a strange kind of, a strange thing to consider when I was younger. And there's one particular scene in Pumpkinhead with Haggis the Witch which always sends a shiver down my spine, and it's the bit where kind of things have got pretty serious and the demon's killing people off, and Lance Henriksen says to her, "Damn you," and without missing a beat she just goes, "He already has, son, he already has." And oh my goodness, that just terrified me when I was younger. That was like, wow, she got some serious darkness going on. But Haggis the Witch was played by a seemingly wonderful woman called Florence Schaeffler, who did a lot of stage work throughout the decades. In fact, her career had to be put on hold shortly during World War II for that to take place. Couldn't find much else that she did movie-wise. I think she might be in Bachelor Party or something like that in a small role, but mainly sort of stage and theatre work. But yeah, so in at number 4, we have Haggis the Witch from Pumpkinhead. In at number 3, we have the Antagonists, led by the man in the mask in The Strangers from 2008. One of the creepiest and most terrifying films that I've seen. This one sees this man and a woman, and they just get a knock on the door in the middle of the night, which in itself is terrifying. That is right up my list of being one of the freakiest things that can happen. And even the exchange with this young woman on the doorstep is unnerving. I don't like that. And then from there, they're terrorised and home invaded by these 3 individuals wearing masks, as I say, led by the man in the mask. And it's just a really, really tense, taut, uncomfortable viewing experience. And the simplicity of this one makes it even worse. I mean, their modus operandi is you were home, and that's the only reason we're doing this, which is so terrifying. And seeing him at the window and things like that is just, yeah, it just makes you feel like you're not even safe in your own house. But the man in the mask was played by a guy called Kip Weeks. Again, couldn't find much else on this guy. I don't think he's done much, but yeah, he certainly brought the creepiness in that movie. So in at number 3, we have the masked perpetrators from The Strangers. In at number 2, we have Albino from Mark of the Devil in 1970. A role that was originally going to go to Anton Diffring, which would have been a very different performance. But Albino is a very sadistic character. He gets way too much pleasure from the torturing and killing of these young women suspected to be witches. And it's been a while since I've watched Mark of the Devil, but I remember his character just being kind of like fiercely enthusiastic about torturing and killing as many people as possible. And even when they sort of bring in the notion of hiring more witch finders to go through more women, he doesn't like that because he wants to do it himself. And it's like, whoa, you are way too into this. And yeah, he just in this movie, he just looks mean, gruff. He looks like he's seen and done the most horrifying things you can imagine. He's acting alongside a very fresh-faced Udo Kier, which only helps to kind of highlight his grizzled features even more. And every time he's on screen, he just really kind of gets under my skin and just makes me so uncomfortable with how enthusiastic he is for all this horrible torture and murder that's going on. But Albino was played by Reginaldo, who was an Austrian actor, actually suffered minor burns to his face at a young age, which gave him kind of like that marked appearance that you see in a lot of his movies. And he would have been most famous probably for playing the vampire in Salem's Lot. But if you want to see an alternative performance from him and one that will really kind of make you wince a little bit, check him out in this one. So in at number 2, we have Albino from Mark of the Devil. And in at number 1, the creepiest horror character of all time is the President in Salo from 1975. In all of cinema, I don't think there is a character that makes my skin crawl as much as this guy. I mean, I'm sure you probably know the film. You might have heard me say it's one of the most nauseatingly disturbing movies I've ever seen. And everything that I feel about that film is kind of quintessentialized in this guy's appearance. Just his crooked eyes, his crooked teeth, his garish, horrible grin as he gleefully swoons around the movie while all this torture and death and degradation is going on. It's just a really uncomfortable demeanor that he has. And whenever I look at him, it makes me feel unwell. I know that's an awful thing to say, but within the confines of Salo and all the horrible things that are going on and the claustrophobic, oppressive feel of all this like abusive environment that they're all in, for me, he's kind of like the flagship character who represents just the nastiness of that film and just the corruptibility of what's going on. Great performance, but man, yeah, he literally makes me feel ill whenever I watch that film. And the President was played by a gentleman called Aldo Valetti, who I could find very little information on, which makes me even more uncomfortable with this guy. All I could find out was he was born in Rome, and he's in a very small number of Italian movies, playing really small parts, a lot of the time uncredited. Salo is his only leading role. I have no idea how he got to working with Pasolini. So yeah, he just completely goes under the radar, but as I say, completely skin crawling in every way is this guy in the movie. So my number one creepiest horror movie character is the President from Salo. So there we go, guys. That is my top 10 creepiest horror movie characters. Let me know what you think about that. Let me know if you agree with any of them. If not, what would your top 10 list be? I'd be really interested to know. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.